الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. Inshallah, tonight we have gathered for the beginning of the Ayyam al-Fatimiyya, meaning that it is the beginning of the gatherings where we commemorate the life of Fatima al-Zahra, the beloved daughter of the Holy Prophet. One of the important things that we have to keep in mind during these nights, especially the nights that are going to be coming, is that each of the Ahlul Bayt, when we look at why they lived and how they died and why they died, there is a reason behind why we're commemorating them. And the reason, it goes back to this idea that Allah has brought these Ahlul Bayt to be living examples of what is possible for human beings to achieve. And so when we're commemorating the life of Fatima al-Zahra, one of the important things that we have to keep in mind is that it shouldn't be a simple, dry commemoration. In that sometimes we've gotten into this mode where we say, okay, let us just remember the Ahlul Bayt, and we'll say something very sad over them, and we will cry and we will weep, and then somehow we have done our duty towards the Ahlul Bayt. Whereas the reality is that what Allah wants from us, and the reason behind these commemorations, is that there are lessons to be learned that we can apply to our lives today. And so if you see that these ayyam, they're coming and going, but nothing is changing within ourselves, and we have to realize that we have to tweak, we have to change the way that we're commemorating. That the way that we're looking at these commemorations, it needs to change. It needs to be with an eye towards how do I take lesson from the lives of the Ahlul Bayt? How do I apply those lessons into my own lives? I want to begin, inshallah, tonight by going into a very brief story about Fatima al-Zahra, and then I'm going to use that to go into the main topic for tonight, which is the topic of Duaa, and the topic of whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually answers our du'as. Because it's a question that sometimes people, they say that we do du'a, we ask Allah, and we've heard that Allah has promised to answer these du'as, but when I do du'a for certain things, I don't seem to receive an answer. So that is the main topic, inshallah, for tonight. But let me begin with one story, and then we'll lead into this main topic, inshallah. Please recite a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And by the way, there was a beautiful rain outside, which rain is one of the signs of divine mercy that we have in the ahadith. Whenever you want a dua to really be answered, go outside in the rain while it's raining and do dua while the mercy and the blessings of Allah are coming down. So that was an interesting thing that we noticed for tonight. But this story for Fatima al-Zahra, it's a very beautiful story, that when her children were young, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, and Zainab, when they were young children, they might have been 3, 4 years old, 5 years old, a story has been narrated that during this time, they noticed that their mother stands up for prayer every single night. So every night they see that when the time comes that the duties of the household are finished, their mother Fatima al-Zahra, she stands and she begins to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when she would finish praying, she would then raise her hands, these blessed hands, and she would begin to do dua. She would ask Allah for a series of things. And the children, they notice something interesting, and they ask their mother. They say, "Mother, why is it that whenever we see you doing dua, you are always doing dua for others? What about yourself? What about us, our family members?" It wasn't that she wasn't doing dua for the family, but it seemed that the primary focus of the dua was in regards to others, the neighbors, the community, the Muslims. Fatima al-Zahra, she says something beautiful. She says, "Al-jar thumma ad-dar." She says first others, first the neighbors, then the household, then us. what is Fatima Zahra teaching her children? And by the way, this is something which is completely opposite to our society today, to the things which we teach our children by example. She is teaching her children that you need to live a life where you serve others for the sake of Allah. Look at our society today. We live in a society which is amazing to watch, by the way, and we juxtapose the life that the Ahlul Bayt are living, the life that the Ahlul Bayt are teaching their children, and we juxtapose it with the lives of the children of our society, where the children of our society are taught what? You, and you. Me, and me. We're taught that first you need to take care of yourself, and then you need to take care of yourself, and then you need to take care of yourself. And by the way, forget about others. They don't really matter. You see the homeless person? Who cares about the homeless person? Just walk over him, maybe throw a few insults at him. He deserves being poor. He deserves being hungry. So what Fatima Zahra is teaching through this dua, that she is doing a dua, and the children are watching her, they are learning from her, that she is teaching them, you need to live a life where you serve others. And indeed, when we look at the life of all of the Ahlul Bayt, you look at from the Holy Prophet, to Imam Ali, to Fatima Zahra, to Imam Hassan, to Imam Hussein, all of the Ahlul Bayt, you see that one of the things which they taught to others was this institution of dua. That they were always telling the believers that whatever you do, always do dua. Always raise your hands and ask Allah for your needs. But the question that comes to mind tonight, and this is the question that we want to explore tonight, inshallah, is the question that sometimes we do dua, but it seems that the du'as are not answered in the way that we want. I'm sure that we have all, at one point we've sat and we've done du'a for becoming a millionaire, a billionaire. And we're still driving the Corolla. We don't have the Lamborghini yet. So what is the reason behind this? I want you to hold this question in your minds. Inshallah, we're going to answer it by the end of this discussion. But the first question that we have to ask is that what is the reason behind dua to begin with? When we look at the Holy Quran, we see that in the Quran there's a very beautiful verse, and we know this verse. It says, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ أَدْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Allah says, call upon me and I am going to answer you. This is the words of Allah in the Quran. Ask me what you need and I'm going to give you the things that you need. So the question that we have to first begin with is, why do we even do dua? What is the reason behind asking Allah? Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of everything which exists, if He knows everything which is within my heart, then why do I need to verbalize? Why do I need to express the need that I have? He already knows. If I don't have a car, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows I don't have a car. Why do I need to say, Ya Allah, I need a car. I'm tired of taking the bus. If I don't have a home, why do I need to ask Allah, Ya Allah, I need a home. I'm tired of living in a cardboard box. So this is the first question that we have to ask, is what is the reason? If Allah knows the things that we need, then why has He asked us to ask Him and request to give us the things that we are in need of? This is the first question that we begin with. Please recite a salawat. My brothers and sisters, the primary reason that we see that Allah establishes this institution, the Ahlul Bayt teach us this institution of dua, is that when we human beings, we end up asking Allah for something, really what we're doing is we're establishing a very important fact about ourselves. What are we establishing? We're establishing the fact that I am in need of my Creator. It's a simple point, isn't it? It's obvious that we need Allah. But the problem with us as human beings is what? As soon as we become a little bit needless, what happens? We forget that we need Allah. And we've all seen this with people, that as soon as, for example, they become a little bit wealthy, what ends up happening? Before, when they were poor, they were on food stamps, they were always in the masjid. They always had a sense that, Ya Allah, I am in need of you. They would pray, they would do dua, they were kind to others. And then as soon as they begin to get a little bit of wealth, what ends up happening? The masjid, forget kindness. Now they have this sense of pride and arrogance within themselves. They don't need anybody, especially not their Creator. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He establishes this. He says, ask me for the things that you need so that you can have this sense of need within you. You don't become arrogant and you don't become prideful. It's a really beautiful point. A lot of times we think that we are needless, and as a result we become arrogant and prideful. And one of the things which the Quran mentions is that one of the signs of the people of the hellfire, if you go and you do the survey of the people of the hellfire, you do the US census in the hellfire, what are you going to find? You're going to find that the people of the hellfire, they have one trait which is primary within them, and that is that they are prideful and they are arrogant. It is arrogance and it is pride which takes them into the hellfire. So this is where we are, that Allah, for the first, the point is that He establishes this sense of need within us so that we always turn towards Him, we don't become prideful and arrogant. So from time to time, Allah is going to send difficulties towards you. He's going to send you a little bit of poverty. He's going to send you a little bit of illness. He's going to send you a little bit of, for example, a bad wife, a bad husband. May Allah protect us from those. He may send you irreligious relatives, and the reason why He's sending you these things is He's trying to establish that you have a sense of need within yourself. As soon as you begin to feel that, you turn towards Allah, the pride vanishes, the arrogance vanishes, you feel humble within yourself. So this is the primary reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He even establishes this institution of dua, and this is why the Ahlul Bayt have encouraged us to turn towards Allah through dua. This is the first reason here. Now there's an interesting verse in the Quran that really, when we read this verse, it amazes you, it shocks you. What does the verse say? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَلَوْلَا أَنْ يَكُونَ النَّاسُ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً لَجَعَلْنَا لِمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالرَّحْمَنِ لِبُيُوتِهِمْ سُقُفًا مِّن فِضَّةٍ وَمَعَارِجَ عَلَيْهَا يَظْهَرُونَ. In this verse, it's going to really surprise you. Allah says, were it not for the danger that all of mankind, all of humanity, every single person would become one community of disbelievers, we would have surely given the people who reject Allah, who defy Allah, who hate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we would have given them so much wealth that they would have made the roofs of their homes and the staircases, the stairways in their homes out of silver. It's a surprising verse that Allah is saying that if it wasn't for the fact that everyone would leave Islam, everyone would leave religion, I would have given those who hate Allah, not those who don't know, those who know, they recognize the Creator and they hate Him, we would have given them so much that they would have built their homes with these precious metals. What is Allah telling us? There's a hint here, and this is going to go back to the reason why some of our du'as are not answered in the way that we want them to be. That sometimes the things that we think are beneficial are actually a punishment from Allah. Now, all of us, we think that wealth is one of the greatest things that we can receive. In fact, I would say the number one dua that every single person here does is wealth. Ya Allah, make me a millionaire. Ya Allah, make me a billionaire. But one of the things that we see in this verse, that Allah is saying that He would punish these people by giving them unbelievable amounts of wealth. Why? Sometimes the things which we receive in this dunya, they act against our benefit. They act to harm us. And this is one of the things that we have to recognize and we have to realize. So, when we're looking at this issue of dua, and the question of why is it that sometimes I do dua, and Allah doesn't give me exactly what I'm asking, what I'm seeking, the answer is that many times the things which we are seeking are the things which will destroy us. The example I'm going to bring is an interesting example. I'm sure all of you have seen this example in your own lives. If you've seen little children, sometimes when you have these little kids, they gain access to sweets. I don't know if you've ever seen a little kid when he comes across that entire pie, that entire cake. And he wants to eat the entirety of the cake. And he's, raging against his parents. And he's telling his parents, I want it, I want it, I want it. He's crying, he's throwing a tantrum, he's throwing things at the walls. And what do the parents say? Parents, they come and they say, I can't give you the whole cake, I can give you a little bit. He's screaming, he's crying, he's saying, why? Why is it that you're doing this to me? Why isn't it that you're not giving me what I want? The parents, they know that if we give this child that entire cake, what's going to happen? He's going to destroy himself. He's going to be sick for the next 3 days. reality is that the things that we are asking for, oftentimes we don't realize this, but the things that we are asking for are the things that would do the exact same thing that that cake does to that child, except worse. Much worse. So this is why when we're looking and we're asking Allah, that we ask, Ya Allah, I want wealth. When we look at what wealth does to human beings, oftentimes, we see the destructive effect that it has on the lives of the wealthy. That the wealthy have lives which are very unsatisfying. They have lives which the families have split apart, and they have psychological issues, and they have this issue, and they have that issue, and they've become where they feel a sense of needlessness from their Creator. They've become irreligious. Then we begin to realize that there is a hikmah, there is a wisdom behind why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give us everything that we want. But some people here, they're going to ask the question, they're going to say, then why is it that sometimes we ask for things which are mustahab and we still don't get it? How do you explain that? Some people, they say, I need to get married. I want to get married. And they ask Allah and it doesn't seem to be forthcoming. And they're going, what's going on? Why isn't Allah giving me this which I'm asking for? Hasn't He promised me in the Quran that if I ask Him, He's going to give me? The answer here again is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sees all of the different factors. He understands all of the things which are taking place. He knows, for example, that if I give this brother a wife, he's not ready to be married yet. What is going to happen? He's going to end up divorced in 5 years. His life is going to be ruined. He's going to have 2 kids who are now not going to have a complete home. And what's going to happen to those kids is their lives are going to be ruined. All of these things are going to take place. So He says, I want what is best for my servant. What am I going to do? Allah, He delays. He says, wait until you are ready. Then I'm going to give you a wife. So here we have to recognize this, my brothers and sisters, that there is a hikmah in the things that Allah decides to give us. So then the question is, okay, then how do we explain the Quranic verse? It says, ask me and I'm going to give you. Is it that Allah is not giving? Have we misunderstood the verse? Is there an issue with the Arabic grammar? No. There's no issue. In the ahadith, Allah explains this phenomena that He says that whenever the servants ask me for something, either He gives it to us in this dunya directly, what we asked for, or if He sees that there is a wisdom in not giving it, He delays it. Meaning that maybe He doesn't want to give it to us today, He gives it to us tomorrow, He gives it to us next month, 5 years, 10 years. And if it is not wise for Him to give it to us in this dunya, then He gives it to us in the akhirah. So we have to recognize this, that whenever we ask Allah, whenever you do a dua, the dua is definitely accepted. And there's conditions, we're going to get to that as well. The dua is accepted, but we have to recognize that the things that we're asking for are not always good for us. And so as a result of that, Allah may delay, and He's going to give us either something better later on, or it's going to save it for the akhirah. This is something that we have to keep in mind. Please recite a salawat. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But there is another point that I'm going to also mention, my dear brothers and sisters, and this is an important point as well, in that there are things that we can do in our lives which destroy the du'as that we deliver. How? Last week when you were in Duaa Kumail, inshallah you were all present in Duaa Kumail, there is a line which is recited in Duaa Kumail, which is a beautiful line. And it gives us a little bit more insight into this issue of dua. Because here it's showing us that there is a link between dua and sin in this Duaa Kumail. When we're reciting Duaa Kumail, there is a line which says the following. It says, Allahumma qfirli ad-dunub allati tahbisu ad-dua. Strange line. It says, Allah, forgive me the sins tahbisu dua, which literally imprison the dua. How in the world does a sin imprison a dua? Literally, imagine that you are sending a dua to Allah and the sin that you have committed is acting like a prison. It's locking up the dua. It's not allowing the dua to reach Allah. Now obviously it doesn't mean that the dua is not reaching Allah. Allah is all hearing. It means that the dua, because of the sin that you have committed, is not worthy of being received by Allah. So here we have to look at this, that there are sins that sometimes we commit, and I'm going to mention 3 of these inshallah tonight, that they have this effect where we become unworthy of having our du'as accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is immense, because sometimes we're asking Allah with a tongue which is so sinful that Allah is saying that with that tongue I can't accept this dua that you are reciting to me. It's possible that we commit these sins and then we, with that same tongue, we attempt to ask Allah for the things that we need. What are these sins? Let's go over them one at a time, inshallah, these three. The first thing, which is one of the elements which prevents the dua from being accepted, is that of haram wealth. Haram wealth. That sometimes a human being, he goes and he works and he makes money which is haram. For example, he has a store which sells haram items, or his job entails haram where others are being harmed. A lot of times when we say haram, we have to understand that haram is very closely linked with harm. There's a sort of harm which is taking place for ourselves, for our fellow human beings. This is what makes it haram. And then we take that money which we make in that haram job, we bring it to the grocery store, we purchase food with that, and then we take that food and we bring it home and we prepare that food. And then when we've prepared that food, we take that food and we begin to eat it and we begin to chew it. And as we chew it, it goes into our stomachs. And as our stomachs digest this food, what ends up happening is that the molecules of energy begin to disperse throughout our body. And part of those molecules, they go into our tongue. They fuel the muscle of our tongue. They fuel our brain. They fuel the muscles of our hands. They fuel the muscles of our bodies that we are using to stand upright in dua. And now with those hands and that tongue and that mind, we're raising our hands and we're saying, Ya Allah, I want you to give me this and that and that. Is it possible that the hand and the tongue, which is being fueled literally by haram, is worthy of having its du'as accepted? So here we have to recognize as well that Allah has put certain conditions. He says that you need to have pure energy. You need to have pure income. You need to have pure food, the food that you eat, which you energize in order to ask Allah for the things that you want. It needs to be pure. In other cases, we may be literally eating haram. We may be putting haram into our bodies, and then we're using that haram, literally haram meat, alcohol, whatever it is, and then now we're turning towards Allah, we're saying, Ya Allah, please, I need this and I need that. And by the way, a question which the people ask is the question they say that, what if we eat haram food by accident? I'm sure we've all been in that situation. Suddenly you read the back of the label, or even worse, it's those people that always have to read the label and tell you, worst thing in the world, that you've already ate it, and now the brother says, oh my God, this has this. You guys just all ate something haram. Now you're wondering to yourself that if Allah is asking this, He's telling us this, then the question is that if I accidentally ate haram, then does that affect me as well? Are my du'as now ineffective? The answer to this is that the scholars have two opinions here. That one group, and I hope this group is wrong, is they say that if you accidentally eat haram, it's the same as drinking poison accidentally. I didn't know, I'm sorry. But the poison still is in your system. And now you need to wait until it goes out before the effects are dissipated. I hope this group of scholars is wrong, because I'm sure we've all had times when accidentally you eat something, then you realize, astaghfirullah, there was something in the label. The other group, they say, no, Allah, He is simply asking you, don't eat haram. It is something which is ta'abbudi. It doesn't have a physical effect until you act in disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that it doesn't have a metaphysical, physical effect until you do it in disobedience of Allah. And that is what gives it this harmful effect where your du'as are not accepted. So this is the first factor which prevents the du'as. The second factor which prevents the du'as are other types of sins. And there's a tradition from Imam Baqir alayhi salam where he says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, where he says that sometimes the servant of Allah, he asks Allah for something. Imagine that you are asking Allah, Ya Allah, I need this, give me this, please. Allah grants him the request. He says, angels, I have granted my servant's request to fulfill his request. And he says, but delay it a little bit. I want you to delay it for various reasons. Then the individual goes and he commits a sin. Do you know what Allah says? He says to the angel, O angel, do not fulfill his request and deprive him of it, for he has made himself the object of my anger, and he is now worthy of being deprived from me. That sometimes we do dua, we don't even know Allah has accepted it, it's going to be fulfilled. He set a time where it is good for the dua to be fulfilled, for us to receive what we have asked. And then we go and we mess up. And we commit a sin, we do something wrong with our hands, with our tongues, with our eyes, with our ears. And now Allah becomes upset. He says, why should I give this individual something? He goes and he commits sins, even these basic things I've told him not to do. So here we have to keep in mind that these sins have different effects. And Duaa Kumail, again, what a beautiful dua. It mentions some of these sins and the effects that it have. And each of these sins, they seem to have different sets of effects. That when we look at Duaa Kumail, we see that, for example, one line it says, Allahumma qfirli ad-dunub allati tahtikul isam, where Allah is saying, oh Allah, forgive me those sins which tear apart the safeguards. What this line is really saying is that imagine that there are things which are protecting you. You know, the world we live in is a really dangerous world. A lot of times we don't realize how dangerous it is. That you're driving down the road and there's all these cars coming past you and these drivers all on their cell phones. We don't really realize how many dangers Allah is protecting us from. But sometimes when we commit some of these sins, those safeguards are torn apart. That Allah removes those safeguards, that protection which is protecting us. So in this dua we ask, we say, Allah, protect us from the sins, or rather forgive us those sins which tear apart the safeguards. Another line, it says, Allahumma qfir li ad-dunub allati tunzilun niqam. Ya Allah, forgive me those sins which as a result, the adversity comes down, the bala comes down, the niqam comes down. All of these difficulties that you were protecting me, as a result of this sin, they begin to come down towards me. Another line, Allahumma qfir li ad-dunub allati tughayyirun ni'am. Ya Allah, forgive me those sins that alter the blessings. Sometimes Allah will give us blessings, and then when He sees that we are sinning, as a result of those sins, those blessings, they alter and they become a curse. Sometimes Allah gives, for example, people money, it's a blessing. As a result of the sins, that same wealth becomes the greatest of curses. And again he continues, Allahumma qfir li ad-dunub allati tahbisu ad-du'a. Allah, forgive me the sins which imprison the du'as. I'm asking you for my needs, and as a result of my sins, it's become imprisoned. The du'a is no longer worthy of reaching you. So here Allah explains, or this Duaa Kumail, it explains that there are all of these sins which have these sort of effects on us. And by the way, my brothers and sisters, most of the time the issues that we have in our lives, the problems that we have in our lives, it's not a result of a divine test or Allah punishing us. Almost always, I would say 99% of the time, it's the mistakes that we make ourselves. It's the sins that we commit ourselves. And as a result of those sins, we're being punished. It's a natural cause and effect. That Allah has set this system up that you do qiba. Okay, there's going to be a punishment in this world for it. But we think that, for example, maybe God is punishing you. No, it's a natural cause and effect that Allah has set up in this world. The third factor which prevents the du'as from being accepted is the factor of oppression. That when we look at all of the rights which exist upon us, we see that there are two types of rights. There's haqqullah and there's haqqun nas. And these are essentially two divisions of the rights that we have. Haqqullah are the rights which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has upon us. Meaning that whenever I need to pray, this is between me and my Lord. If I don't pray, I have to ask Allah for forgiveness. If I don't fast, I need to ask Allah for forgiveness. And then there is another set of rights which are upon us, which are the haqqun nas. And this is the right that, for example, my brother has upon me, that if I strike him, if I hit him, then I have to ask forgiveness from that individual. Sometimes we hurt people. We say things which harm people. We do things which affect people in a negative way. And then when we begin to do dua, we realize that the dua is not being accepted, and we're wondering what's going on. Why isn't it rising? Why isn't it reaching? Why isn't it being accepted? And we realize that that individual that we have harmed has done dua against us. And one of the things which is really frightening, by the way, is that on the day of judgment, we know that Allah is the most merciful. We're going to say, Ya Allah, I messed up in regards to this. Please forgive me. Allah is going to say, sure, you're forgiven. But when we ask others to forgive us for the sins that we have committed against them, then human beings, one of the things that I've noticed is they're not very forgiving, are they? And in fact, we could say, Ya Allah, I want you to forgive me. He's saying, I can't. You didn't do anything against me, you did it against my servant. You need to go and you need to ask him for forgiveness. We're going to go on the day of judgment and we're going to ask these individuals, for example, I said this ghibah about you that one time, I backbit. I want you to forgive me. He's going to say, why should I forgive you? This is a day, that day of judgment, that a mother is going to run from her child. Parents are going to run from their children. Children are going to run from their parents. They're going to flee from them. You think that that person is going to forgive you on the day of judgment? And so usually what we know from the ahadith is that what happens is you need to give up some of your good deeds that you have done in this world, and then the person says, okay, now that you've given me these good deeds, now I forgive you. So that's a bad day to be in that situation where we have this haqqun nas upon our necks. Please recite a salawat. Inshallah, I'm going to end it here, and I'm going to end it with this point, that now that we have gone over these things, what happens if we mess up? Because this is one of the realities, isn't it? That as human beings, we are all going to commit sins at one point or another. It's normal, it's natural that a human being, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to say things, we're going to do things, we're going to make mistakes. And so the answer to this, of what do we do, the answer is that Allah has created a door. And He has left that door open for us at all times. And that is the door of istighfar, and we really need to make more use of it. That Allah has promised us, He says, look, I know you're going to make mistakes. I know you're going to have times when you slip up. At the time when you realize that you have made a mistake, go and seek forgiveness from me. I will accept your repentance. And so this is one of the things that Allah has left open for us. Whenever we do make mistakes, whenever we feel the du'as are not being accepted, then we always have to turn towards Allah through this door of istighfar. And the final point for tonight, inshallah, is that one of the things when it comes to these du'as is that within the school of the Ahlul Bayt, we honestly have some of the most beautiful du'as within any of the other religions or sects in the world. Just go and look at these du'as, Du'a Kumail, look at Sahif al-Sajjadiyya, look at these du'a books that we have from the Ahlul Bayt. They are unparalleled in the world. Compare, for example, the du'as that we have with the du'as that the people from the school of the Ahlul Sunnah have. Compare our du'as with the du'as that, for example, the Christians or the Jews have or the Hindus have. There is no question our du'as are some of the most beautiful du'as. And what the Ahlul Bayt are teaching us through these du'as are not only accepting that we have this need for Allah and accepting the humility and humbleness within our hearts, but they are teaching us how to even worship Allah, how to express this need that we have towards Allah. So inshallah, we can make a little bit more use of this in our lives, and we can inshallah not be deprived of these du'as which the Ahlul Bayt have left us, inshallah. Please recite a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa
Thank you.